Well, while the global community continues to grapple with challenges occasioned by COVID-19 pandemic, the war in Ukraine is set to be devastating countries, communities, displacing millions, creating economic and social reverberations across the globe, and inserting yet more uncertainty into global markets and economic recovery plans. It is against this backdrop that policymakers, experts, influencers, and other key stakeholders converged on Washington, D.C. for the just concluded 2022 IMF World Bank spring meetings to meet minds, discuss these challenges, and design pathways forward to build on policies and programs already under implementation by the World Bank Group and its partners. As the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic continues to disrupt lives and livelihoods in nearly every country on the earth, and looming food crisis, even the FDB confirmed that, underpinned by soaring with fertilizer and fuel prices, threatens to drastically increase food insecurity and drive millions of additional people into poverty. Let's understand this, and I'm being joined live from Abuja via Zoom, developmental economist and public policy analyst, Professor Ken Ife. Prof, good afternoon, sir. Thank you for your time.
Oh, hi, good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me.
Yes, Prof, I'd like to go straight to the first submission that came from the president of the World Bank, saying that Nigeria must rethink fuel subsidy payments and multiple exchange rates. These are two big ones. What is your reaction to this, Prof? How do you take this?
Well, what you need to understand is that IMF is there to defend monetary policies around the world. And World Bank also does their own bit in promoting development. So they're doing their job when they advise member states of the IMF and member states of World Bank to approach certain policy parameters with caution. So it is their job, but that doesn't mean that they do not recognize the peculiarities of every country. Every country is peculiar. So they've given the advice. We have to eschew that and look at our own circumstances. And in light of our circumstances, we do our best to meet their expectations. But it's not the other way around, that they can be prescriptive of what they expect us to do by way of monetary and fiscal policy. So having said that, we as a country face a situation where over 80% of the forex that we have or we earn from the external sector comes from oil. And we have no control over the volume of oil produced nor the price at which they are selling globally. So we are very, very vulnerable to exogenous factors around the forex revenue. But having said that, the request for forex, which is demand for it, is more than twice what we get. So these two curves have no way of meeting each other. So you cannot think of equilibrium when you are essentially running an import-dependent economy that is constantly pressing you on forex resources, dollar resources. So these two lines are not likely to meet. So you can't tell me to float my currency because it would be asking me to commit suicide. And then on the other hand, we have other issues around structural factors. And there's so many structural factors at play. We've seen what the COVID has done. We have to borrow so much money to maintain and even jump out of recession in one quarter. We have to borrow money to persecute asymmetric warfare in all the 6 geopolitical zones, and that same warfare have impacted heavily on our agricultural production, putting us at risk of food security. So, and then we also have other challenges around the transmission of monetary policy, the demand, the orchestration of dollarization of our economy, the spurious demand for our dollar, all kinds of things going on. And in the end of the day, we have to manage our foreign currency and what we have. And that's really what the position that the bank is following. And the third thing is that we cannot sacrifice our economy just because we want to abide by certain standard monetary and fiscal policies. The thing is, we need to promote employment. We need to promote diversification. We need to promote growth. We need to invest in infrastructure in our economy. And then we'll have to find the appropriate policy, fiscal, monetary policy mix that enables us to support employment, growth, diversification in our economy. It should not be the other way around. You can't sacrifice all those just because you have an obsession for inflation, and then you run away with that. It's not possible. If you look at FedEx, the Federal Reserve Bank in America, they have two primary purposes, core mandates: financial systems, not financial systems, price stability and employment. Those are the two. So what's wrong? We pursue employment here as well as growth and diversification of our economy. And in addition to that, of course, the monetary policy, the price stability and financial system stability. So that's the issue. That's how we are approaching this. And I don't think we should be stampeded in the way we're doing what we're doing.
Prof, let me follow up with 4 trillion naira that's been earmarked for petroleum subsidy. And we still have issues with regards to our daily consumption. Some are saying that if this is checked, we can continue to pay subsidy for what we consume. But we still have issues around smuggling and all of that. Can we sustain this?
No, it's not sustainable. That level of, first of all, I do not agree with subsidizing consumption. You don't subsidize consumption. What you subsidize is production. And you know that the challenge we have is production of refined products. So because we are not doing that, and we're not letting the private sector free to pursue that, with 75 licenses given out for modular refineries, and we have over 120 oil fields that are available for modular refineries, that's where we should focus on. Private sector needs money to do that, and they have money that they are going to borrow and they pay them back within a year to 3 years. So I do not support constant subsidy of those, because look at what is going on right now. Normally, the central bank would be expecting $3 billion every month of proceeds from crude oil. It hasn't got them since January last year, 2021, because the NNPC does a crude swap deal where they send the crude to the refiners abroad and they send back PMS. And then they now turn back and ask government to bring money for subsidy in the budget, which is now competing with all the other items in the budget, including capital expenditure. So, and it's not sustainable, because you're now telling the governors to walk away empty-handed when this is a federation business and federation account business. So I think it's high time that we face that challenge and gradually phase down the subsidy. I know everybody seems to be waiting for Dangote refinery to come on stream, but even then, it will only give us about 40% relief, reduction on the imports. It may not wipe out completely. We need to have the modular refineries come in, because that is the way we can balance this. And let's put a stop. Let the importers go, and they all have enough money to float modular refineries. Let those fuel importers go and do some full modular refinery. It's not sustainable. You should take 1 trillion of that 4 trillion and put it in subsidizing agriculture, so that we can be more comfortable about food security and nutrition, and as well as industrial raw materials, agro-industrial raw materials. That's the way to go.
That's the way to go. Even the AFDB has come up to say that the fertilizer hike, the scarcity, and of course hiking price of fertilizer, and they're coming with an intervention of some amount, thinking about 1.5 billion US dollars for Africa, not just Nigeria. Now, Prof, let me ask this way: what impact do you think this would have, considering what's already been happening in country with regards to agricultural development, support by the central bank, and of course other ends?
All right, the $1.5 billion they are talking about is targeted at 5 million smallholder farmers.
Yes.
And of these 5 million, they expect them to do 1 million hectare of maize, do 1 million hectare of rice, do 250,000 hectares of sorghum, and do 250,000 hectares of soya beans. Altogether, they expect them to yield 9.5 million metric tons of food. I mean, 5 million farmers. Our Anchor Borrowers program has already disbursed to 5 million farmers already. Almost 1 trillion. 1 trillion naira has already been disbursed to 5 million farmers who have actually planted well over 5.5 million hectares of land. So I think we are already on that. Other countries will have to come and borrow a leaf from what we are doing in Nigeria on Anchor Borrowers program. Then second thing, of course, is that, yes, there's going to be a spiral in rise in price of fertilizer, phosphate fertilizers, but Nigeria is not going to be vulnerable because we have well over 14 fertilizer blending plants in Nigeria with the deal we have with Morocco. So we're okay in that respect. I think we should be exporting to African countries. That's number one. Then number two is, of course, the Dangote phosphate is producing urea right now, and we should be exporting this urea to the rest of Africa. So we are okay in that respect. We are not going to be subject to these 20 million people that they say that are going to be facing starvation. That is a UN World Food Program is predicting that about 20 million people are going to be facing starvation in the world. And also, World Bank suggested that for each 1% rise in the price of food, 10 million people are thrown out of poverty, below poverty line. So that's a big one.
Great. Now, Prof, let's talk about global trade, which they're also saying that Nigeria faces some trade barriers from high import tariff, export tariff, and all of that, expensive food price subsidies. We've talked about that. And all. What do you think can be done? Recently, the borders have now been opened. A two-way question. Would you say that the federal government actually, what was achieved in closing that border for almost 2 years? Is it a plus or a minus for us? And what can be done to strengthen all these issues around trade barriers?
I think what WTO in that joint statement was alluding to is the possibility, we saw that in 2020, the possibility that countries are going to run scared, and then say, okay, and start restricting food export. And remember that happened. We couldn't import active pharmaceutical ingredients, and many countries like India and Indonesia, they were restricting export of APIs. And our pharmaceutical companies here in Nigeria depended over 90% on imported active pharmaceutical ingredients. And even some food items were being restricted because they were being cautious. And then also the scare comes from active purchases from a UN World Food Program, because they are mopping up and buying food and stockpiling food. Imagine they predicted about 8.5 million Ukrainians are going to be refugees, and then add about 3 million in the IDP camp in Nigeria, and other numbers, millions in other countries fleeing in for their safety. These people have to be fed. So World Food Program is buying up food, and that in itself is creating artificial scarcity and pushing up inflation. Now you're now adding to it shortage of fertilizer and higher price of fertilizer. All forms of input costs are going up. Energy price is going up for processing any food, and gas is going up for the heating, domestic heating, and all kind of industry. So all of them are impacting on price and inflation. Already in the UK, inflation is over 7%. In the US, it's over 8.5%, from the worst in 40 years. So all this will culminate in the slowing down of the global economy. And so they are revising down their forecasts.
So what would be your projection? Yes, I know we've had projections before now. And even like you said, the IMF and the World Bank is even doing some reviews at this time. With all of the issues globally and domestically, what's your outlook, should I say, for the agricultural space? Because the fear of food security is something that all of us need to worry about. What are you thinking, Prof, as we move on? Let's focus on Nigeria.
Yeah, even the bank, the World Bank, they're forecasting an increase in our growth rate.
Exactly.
Even though Nigeria is feeding, they prepare 3.4%.
Yeah.
So even though Nigeria is feeding 300 million people, including the Francophone neighbors in the northern frontiers, we are feeding all that. Chad, Niger, Mali, all these countries are depending on Nigerian grains and tubers. So we seem to be holding up. We are holding up because of the massive investment by central bank in all kinds of interventions, affecting food, and even launched more programs on the export phase, which is the real-time $200 billion over the next 2 to 3 years on non-oil export, and as well as 100 for 100 PPP to bring more productive capacity to bear on our raw materials, industrial raw materials. That is taking up the baton from the Anchor Growers program, which is at the primary production level. So you can see a continuum of intervention from primary to secondary processing and then also to export. So all of that are going to make, and then with Dangote coming in on stream, that will all going to impact positively on our growth and resilience. And so that's why they are comfortable. And of course, high oil prices, high crude prices, far above the benchmarks, oil benchmarks. So all of those are giving confidence to the international community to predict a rise in our GDP growth rate.
Well, it's a good way to leave it, Prof. It's always interesting talking to you. Television time is never enough, but I must thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, making us understand all of the outcomes of this meeting, and we'll see how it all plays out. Thank you, Professor Kenny Faye, who's a development economist and also a public policy analyst. Do enjoy the rest of your day, Prof.
Thank you very much.